Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of Year 8 English. So today we went through the weekly tasks. We went to the English planner for Year 8 and we tapped on weekly task, week 1, what's your story? Once you're into what's your story, yesterday we went through lesson 1. Today we revised some of this and spoke about some of the questions. So what is your story? You need to be thinking about your family history. You need to be having conversations with your mum, dad, grandparents, older brother or sister to see what you can find out about your own family history. Here on the right-hand side is the YouTube link to a picture book called What's Your Story? Please view this or read this as it will give you an idea of how to put your own story into a story. That's an activity you need to complete. The second activity here was defining, what is fact and what is fiction? What is historical fiction? What is historical fact? Just some definitions. The third part of the first lesson for English this week was then looking at this funny video with Jimmy Fallon, looking at what is fact and what is fiction directly in relation to the current coronavirus epidemic. A bit of a light-hearted look at comparing fact and fiction. Today we then discussed in detail lesson 2 and lesson 3. Make sure you always have a notebook with you, keep your areas tidy, have a pen, make sure your device is plugged in, you've written the date on your book, and you've also got your novel. So today was more focused on our novel. So what is the genre of our novel? Which means basically, what type of novel is it? Is it a horror? Is it a love story? Is it a romantic theme? Then we looked at, what are the main themes of the book? Now you need to have started some reading in order to know the answer to this question. You need to come up with, what are some of the topics, the generic topics that have come up in the book? For example, one might be gender roles. So the roles of females and the roles of males in the 1900s. You get a bit of a feel for these as you read through at least the first few chapters of the novel and then throughout. Who is the main character? If you've read at least the first chapter, you should know who's telling us the story. Where is it set? In what country, place, city? This should also become relevant within the first 2 or 3 chapters. When is it set? The time, the era. Is it early 1800s, 1900s, or is it modern day society? The book will tell you this once you've started reading the first couple of chapters. On the right-hand side here is a link to the YouTube audiobook that your Year 8 teachers have spent time reading for you, so you can have an audiobook to read along with you as you read the book. This might help you get through the actual novel a little bit quicker. The next activity, once you've started those questions and thought about the generic information about the Ratcatcher's daughter, is then to actually start reading. Now, as you start reading, what you do need to do is start taking notes. You'll need to have your notebook and you'll need to come up with ways to take notes on each chapter. And a way of doing this is looking at how to take Cornell notes. It shows you how to break up your notebook, come up with topics and subjects, and also follow through in taking notes for each chapter so you can then recall information. Our main point here, though, is to start reading the novel or listening to the novel. We then went down and there's further reading and listening to do for the novel. And then I briefly discussed lesson 4 and lesson 5. Again, we start off with just an introduction about, let's compare some of the things that are happening in Brisbane in the 1900s, which is your novel that you're reading. And then let's have a look at Brisbane today with the COVID-19 outbreak, and let's do some comparisons. But again, you need to have done some reading, at least the first 3, 4, 5 chapters to be able to complete these activities. So please start reading. Then you need to consider this question here. History is a collection of stories, some of them tragic, which means sad, some of them triumphant, which means joyful. Considering what happens in Brisbane during the plague outbreak of 1900, which is when your novel Ratcatcher's Daughter is set, Before, during, and after, how does it make you feel when the world is gripped in pandemic of coronavirus right now? So give us some idea of how you're feeling and where you're at the moment, living through a pandemic. Then you needed to maybe watch again how to take notes. This will give you some ideas on the themes, symbols, the reoccurring motifs that come throughout the novel. So please take time to watch the Ratcatcher's Daughter Literary Devices video. And then for a bit of fun, maybe you can come up with your own parody or dark comedy of, well, being stuck in a coronavirus. You can watch the Rhapsody, Lockdown Rhapsody, or even the Black Death Hollaback Girl by Gwen Stefani.